We're starting now with the New Testament world. We're going to start with chapter 1, but before we start, we're going to see that I'm not going to go into chapter 1 too deep, because a lot of the stuff that is in chapter 1 is the end of the Old Testament already discussed. So I'm going to just give a few things and then we're going to go on. Okay? Okay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The background to the fall of Jerusalem, I'm just giving stuff that's maybe important or we didn't deal with. Okay? Most information in the first chapter was completed at the end of the manual, the Old Testament world, but a few new facts will be added. You still have to read through the chapters and do the questions behind each lesson. So you still need to go through it, okay? Right. Let's go for it. To add to the last mentioned city, Elephantine, remember we discussed it, was on that one island sort of, Elephantine, which we discussed in the Old Testament with the last chapter. It is noted in the New Testament background in chapter 1, page 15, that one of the gods that were worshipped in Elephantine was the Queen of Heaven, in Jeremiah 14 and Chronicles 33 and 34. Now that we didn't see there. That's the Queen of Heaven. Okay. That was the one that they worshipped at that place also. That we didn't deeply discuss, but that is one of the gods they had there. This became clear as we clearly saw that the Judaism of the New Testament times had its roots in the new Jews who went to Babylon. That is where the Jews really most started. The Jews name, Jews, came after the Babylon capture there. And the Greek Old Testament used the Jesus as the early church came out of the Jewish settlement in Egypt. This became clear, so with other words, the Judaism of the New Testament times had its roots in the Jews who went to Babylon. There was any capture there for their time, 70 years there. But the Greek Old Testament, remember we went over to the Greek Old Testament? The Greek Old Testament. The Greek Old Testament, remember that was translated, used by the Jews, and the early church came out of the Jewish settlement in Egypt. The one in Babylon, the one in Egypt. There we see again there's two different parts. Okay. So we have a question. How many years were the Jews in captivity? Do you know? I just mentioned it.
70 years.
70 years. 70 years. The last ruler of Babylon was given in Daniel 5 verse 30, namely Belshazzar, who was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 8 verse 18. That was the one. Cyrus was the largest empire at the time in the world, and the Persian Empire lasted 2 centuries. Okay? The important message from Isaiah 45 was the exile of the Jews would become known as Yahweh's servant who must suffer before being delivered by the mighty act of their God. So that is our God. The glory of Israel's God would be manifested through his miraculous deliverance of the lowly and important captives. God used Cyrus for the return of the Jews and the rebuild of the temple. So Cyrus was originally chosen. The second temple was dedicated at 515, so 515 before Christ, 70 years after the destruction of the first temple, the temple of Solomon. So what do we see now? There were 70 years in captivity, and the temple was dedicated 515, exactly 70 years after the destruction of the first temple. So again we see that 7 times 10, the numbers, And 7, the fulfillment of God is the 7, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see it again. Somewhere in a time frame between 445 to 432 before Christ, when Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, the city's walls was built within 52 days. After there was 3 attempts to discourage Nehemiah of rebuilding the walls in Nehemiah 6 verse 1 and further. Okay. Now that is all that I could find in chapter 1 that I feel we need to look at as a summary of those things. Okay. The rest is actually most of the stuff that we already dealt with. And I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's necessary. Because we did the Old Testament first and not this, the other way around. Right. Chapter 2, the Greek period 332 to 167 before Christ. Now, during this period, Aramaic replaced Hebrew. Now we know that when the New Testament was written, the normal Hebrews didn't speak Hebrew anymore. They spoke Greek and Aramaic. But we know that Jesus could speak Hebrew. Automatically he could speak Hebrew. You know? In the Hellenistic period, Greek was the official language. That is, you also know. That was the last discussion. Koine Greek, of Common Greek, replaces Aramaic and centers of Greek culture. That also come from the Old Testament's closing when we started there. Hebrew was translated into Greek, middle in the 3rd century before Christ at Alexandria. Now, it was the middle of the 3rd century before Christ at Alexandria. There it started already. Before Christ it started already and the Hebrew was translated into Greek. So it's not only right straight, okay, now it's the New Testament times after Christ and now it's Greek. It started before Christ already. Okay, it started. Palestinian Jews continued, official language was Aramaic. So there we look at again, the official language of the Palestinians were Aramaic. So, for interest's sake, I just discussed it, as I said it to Peter a moment ago. I said, what is happening at the moment between Egypt, or Israel, not Egypt, Israel and Palestine? They're fighting again. Isn't that exactly what we're talking about all the time?
Yeah.
How many times did they fight? And then they fight again.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop. And just in the north part is it Lebanon and Israel. It's going on, there's always the same places. It's not different names, it's the names in the Bible. It's the names in the Bible, it's always the same places fighting with Israel. But why? Originally, when they were still the 10 tribes together, they were one nation. But now they're all broken up. And they said now they Arabs and they Jews and they this and they that. You understand what I'm saying? So it's exactly they're going on with what happened before Christ already for years. They're still going on. It just shows you how really accurate the Bible actually is. It's very accurate. Right, but the Greek translation of the Old Testament was frequently used, and the New Testament was written originally in Greek. Western literature became prominent. Possible Hellenistic influence, that's the influence of a Greek language, literature, culture, that flowed in slowly into the Hebrew nation, or the Jewish nation. The apocalyptic literature flourished. It was a type of literature which used images and impressionistic language. That is that little stripes and hockeys and things they write still with, the Hebrew language. To camouflage its message to the outsider, but now you can study the language and you can read and write it. It's not camouflaging anymore. Okay, so the accomplishment of Alexander the Great. Philip II of Macedon united Greece, which would dominate the world. Did you read that thing that I put on the group today? Listen to it. About, I don't know what the guy's name is, but it's one of the Hamas leaders
Okay.
that said that the Palestinian people, the Muslim leaders, well, it's Islam, they got it from Muhammad that they must kill all the Jews and all the Christians so that they can dominate the world. And that is apparently in their Quran that is given by Muhammad. So my question on the group was, who is the Antichrist? Just for a debate.
Okay.
Just for a debate. Who's the Antichrist? If they want to do that, who's the Antichrist? Just for a debate that they threw out. So you don't need to answer. It's just a question, you know. It's going on now, and they said straight. They're going to kill, they want world dominance. This is, who was this domination? The Greece would dominate the world. Philip II and Maxim united Greece, which would dominate the world. Now, it's the Palestinians, the Muslims. I can't say the Arabs. Yeah, it's probably most of them are Arabs, but we've got Muslims in South Africa that's not Arabs.
Yeah.
So again, it's a fact of, they said the Muslim people. The Muslim belief because they mentioned Muhammad. So that's the Muslim belief. That they going to dominate the world and they will kill all Jews and all Christians. That is what they said. That is online, you can find it. So it's just a thought that who's the Antichrist. So, but Philip II came in power in 359 before Christ. 23 years he worked towards capturing Greek cities from Persian domination. There became again Persian domination. And the building of a military machine which would crush Persia. He was assassinated in 365 before Christ before he could crush Persia. His wife Olympias, the mother of Alexander III, was suspected of hiring a young man to stab Philip to prevent the birth of a son of another wife. So, a vicious nation.
Yeah.
Alexander was 19 when he became emperor. He was tortured by Aristotle, who loved Greek ideas and culture. Aristotle taught Alexander philosophy, mathematics, ethics, science, and medicine. Alexander carried copies of Homer's Iliad and Odysseus on his campaigns, and at the outset of his campaign, he conveyed developing a universal empire. Again, a universal empire. Everyone wants to rule the world. And nobody will be able to rule the world because it's God's will. And he planted Greek colonies and culture everywhere. His first accomplishments were the enforcement of the solidarity of the Hellenic language and the subjection of the Thracians beyond the Danube. In 334 before Christ, he crossed the Hellespont to begin his campaign against the Persians. Here we go again. Let's go against the Persians again. And 323 before Christ, the greatest opposition was Tyre in Gaza, who withheld him for 7 months. There we get Tyre and Gaza in. What is going on at the moment is between Gaza and Israel. So, Jerusalem fell without serious opposition. 332 before Christ, he succeeded in his campaign against Egypt, totally. Now it's Egypt. So they're fighting all the years there. They're going on. I mean, this is already 332 before Christ. So it's nothing new. So they used to get going on and going on. Now, Alexander's exploration carried him from. Okay, so he went to Parthia, then to Bactria, India, Indus River to the Indian Ocean, and turned back. The southern route which led up to the coast of the Persian Gulf. He traveled approximately 15,000 miles Now at that time, it's a lot. They didn't have cars.
Yeah.
It would have been by horse. It's quite a long, it's really a long time. 232 before was he died of a fever in Babylon after prolonged drunken orgies in the age of 33. So, drunken organ, again, all the things you mustn't do. Liquor. So, in less than 40 years, he had established a greater empire than the Persians, spread Greek culture throughout the empire, established a new style of government, established approximately 70 cities. The year we come again, a 70. Again 70.
Yeah.
He discharged soldiers because of age, could no longer participate in the forces' marches when they can't. Soldiers took native wives and formed the nucleus at the cities. The mixed marriages added to the unification of the diverse cultures, and the empire was divided at his death. So, diverse cultures, sorry, unification of the diverse cultures. They're going to dive very, very deep. Diverse cultures. So, here we get it again. Other women. So, not one of those cultures is pure. It's going on the whole time already from the Old Testament they come in. The mixed marriages added to the unification of the diverse cultures. Let's say it again. How many times before did we already see the males marrying other women? So it's not a pure culture. The empire was divided at his death. Or would I say the culture could have changed all the same, but the bloodline is from different areas. Yeah, if you can say it like that. But each division continued to be Greek in interest and emphasis. As I said, the interest was the same. But that's also all. The nature of doing things is different. He spread Greek philosophy, traditions and culture which have greatly influenced Western civilization. So yeah, here we go again. We do still have the influence of the Western civilization still going on. Okay. Alexander's successors, he left no higher to the throne, or mentally retarded. He had a mentally retarded brother, Philip Arrhenius, could go, or his unborn child of Bactriane, his wife Roxanne, in other words, in Bactriane, his wife's name is Roxanne. That unborn child can maybe get take over, or agree that his son and brother Philip would rule. So he's got 3 options there to do. So, Perdiccas, the general, served as regent. When Roxanne's son was born, there was no difference. So, with other words, the son and his brother Philip ruled at this stage. But when the baby was born, that was actually legally the right to the throne, there was no change. They didn't take it as a king or take over. The leaders already launched a struggle for power which resulted in a 20-year of war. Again, they want some power. So they struggled and that baby didn't get the throne. Alexander married daughter of Darius and she was killed in order of Roxanne. So Roxanne at the end ordered that Darius must be killed. The daughter of Darius. Alexander married the daughter of Darius and she was killed under the order of Roxanne. So that is now with the reign of Alexander. Alexander is a woman. Okay, it's a woman. So his half brother was put to death in order of a living. This is still the woman. The other, Salome Alexander, it's not the same one, this is the male, sorry. His half-brother was put to death in order of Olympias, Alexander's mother. Again, there's the mother also. Eventually, Olympias, Roxanne, Alexander IV, and able leaders of empire were killed. All the leaders that was able to do something were killed. Now just think a bit about if all the leaders in South Africa that was able to do something, somebody go around and kill them, what is left? We're going to have a very big problem. We will have a very big problem. In 350 before Christ, 4 generals had emerged as dominant leaders. This period known as the Diadochoi, the successors. Diadochoi, the king's successors. Okay. I'm going very fast through it. I'm just mentioning the main points. In the 3rd century before Christ, Seleucus controlled Babylonia. The 3rd century before Christ, Seleucus controlled Babylonia, Syria, and Asia Minor. Now you must take notes in your head of these names, some of these names, and you will see how how they go zigzag, and then they control, and then not. You must just take notes of this. Antigonus ruled in Europe. Pompey ruled in Egypt and Palestine. During the century, the struggle over Palestine continued between the houses of Ptolemy and Seleucus. Pompey get control over Palestine from 301 to 198 before Christ. And then Palestine again, Palestine. The Jews under the Ptolemies. So let's see what happened with him when he was under the Ptolemies. Little information was about them, about Palestine. Most of the Old Testament was completed and took final form. So now we can see that we step over now to a new era. The Old Testament was completed and we're busy stepping over into the new era. Letter of Aristeas in 285 to 248 before Christ was written during time in Toomey, Philadelphia, and states that Ptolemy I Soter in 311 and 285 before Christ transported a lot, 1 million Jews to Egypt. Ptolemy Philadelphus was not oppressive and give freedom to the Jews. So the Jews settled in separate sections of the city close to seashores. So again we see that the Jews was against the seashores. Just for interest's sake, Jesus' first disciples were fishermen, also by the seashore. They were distinctly Jewish, but among them were a Jew influenced by their Greek environment. So that was Jew culture between the Greek environment. So again, they got mixed at the end. It depends how long they work together. The one will influence the other one. And the Greeks have their God, and so will be influenced. And that developed a type of Judaism which incorporated many Greek ideas. So what happened here, the Jews was stronger. They had the Jewish idea, but there was Greek ideas also in between. The Greek translation began during the period of the Old Testament. 250 before Christ, the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, was translated. So, the first 5 books of the Old Testament is the Old Testament law that they call a Torah. Okay, that's the Torah. New Testament times of the Septuagint, Greek word for 70, was completed. That is the Old Testament Greek translation. It's a Septuagint. Okay. The Jews under the Seleucids, the name. 270 before Christ, Antiochus II attempted twice to take Palestine, but was driven back by Ptolemy IV. Philopator, successor, was a child of 4 years, and Antiochus took Palestine from Ptolemies. So that child was only 4 years old. But at least he had help. He didn't rule from himself. In 192 before Christ, Rome declared war on Antiochus. In 191 before Christ, Rome marched in Thessaly. Antiochus was defeated at the pass of Thermopylae, and again at Magnesia. Antiochus was forced to give up all but Cilicia in Asia and to pay a large indemnity. Okay. All just main focus at this stage. What he had to do with the tax. So, what he did, he increased the already heavy tax to pay the Romans. Tax. The Jews has been accustomed to the heavy taxation under Ptolemies, but under Seleucus it was increased. So now it's coming up again. The high priest Onius II refused to pay personal tribute for tax of 20 talents to Ptolemy before the Battle of Raphia, a battle which promised to be the defeat of Ptolemy by Antiochus III. Previously, tax would annually be paid by the high priest for royal recognition. Yeah, okay. So just because he's royal, he can get tax. But now we, on the other side, what did Jesus do when they asked him, must we pay tax? What did Jesus do?
Give to Caesar.
What belongs, because he took a coin and he said, give to him what belongs to him. So it's something totally else. That's what in that time. Joseph, the leader of rival faction, Palestine, and the nephew of Onias, by Ptolemy to prevent him from making Judea a military control. Joseph becomes civil leader and a tax farmer for the entire country. So yeah, there we get our tax stories from. And it's still running. It's still running. The new position raised the wealth and power of the house of Turbius and put it on the level with the house of Onius. In 100 before Christ, Antiochus III took over Palestine and Joseph became pro-Syria. With the change of the event in Palestine, Onius II became pro-Ptolemy. That name I struggle every time. Ptolemy. By the time of Joseph's death, Judea had lost her special sacral status and had come to be treated as a purely political entity. There, God is gone. It's just a political state. So, quite interesting if you think of Israel, what's coming through your head immediately if you say Israel or Jerusalem?
War.
God.
Or
Don't you think, if you say America, you don't think of God. But if you say Jerusalem, Israel, God is immediately there. So it's a godly state. But here they say that it become political Judea. Now you will say Judea and you will know, okay, wait, that is also God's state. But that time it became totally political. God was out of the picture there. Okay. So Lucius IV, philosopher, 187 to 175 before Christ. With his defeat at Magnesia in 190 before Christ, Antiochus was forced to pay enormous repetitions during the following years. He established the practice of confiscating temples. The Seleucus IV, his son and his successor, continued it. So they just cleaned up, confiscated everything. 3 of the sons of Joseph continued to cause trouble, which led to rioting. Onius III, who was the priest in 175 before Christ, decided to go to Seleucus IV for help to quell the riots. But on the journey, he was murdered by Heliodorus, who aspired to take over the government. So there, the temples is again. Every time is the temples. Every time they take the temples and they confiscate everything. So don't you think it's because the temples are so, God's temples are so important that Satan can take it every time and take the stuff inside it?
Yeah,
Isn't it?
it is very important.
Yeah. So he tried to destroy it and every time God bring it up again. He can't win. Antiochus IV, 175 to 164 before Christ. After the Battle of Magnesia, Antiochus IV lived in Rome as a hostage for 12 years. He was impressed by the Hellenistic culture and the Roman power. Upon becoming king, he sought to continue the expansionist policies of his father Antiochus III and he determined to promote the Hellenistic culture. Okay, I explained already. What is Hellenistic culture again?
The Hellenistic culture.
Yeah, what is Hellenistic culture again? That is the Greek culture, habits and things like that, literature and so on. Okay. Antiochus concluded that the Jewish religion was partially responsible for the obstinacy of the Jews. His desire to Hellenize his possessions and thus gave them a common worship and culture, his reaction to the Roman demand to withdraw from Egypt and his determination to stamp out Jews' religion and substitute Greek deities motivate his drastic policy towards the Jews. There's a lot of things that I mentioned there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. Antiochus concluded that Jewish religion was partially responsible for the apostasy of the Jews. His desire to Hellenistic his possessions and that thus give them a common worship of culture. His reaction to the Roman demand to withdraw from Egypt I wonder if that must be a dominant demand, but anyway, to withdraw from Egypt and his determinations to stamp out the Jewish religion and substitute Greek deities motivate his drastic policies towards the Jews. So he really wanted to get Greek culture into there. He promoted religion observances based on the law, the observance of the Sabbath, circumcision, and possession of the Torah. Violators were punished with death. Okay. Antiochus established himself as a deity and made pagan rites compulsory and required the Jews to worship Greek deities. Now, he made it compulsory. Now tell me, just for interest's sake, say now, they start forcing us, we can pray to our God, but we must worship Greek, some pagan religions also. What will you do? They make it compulsory.
No, I prefer willing to die.
I'm willing to die. I will not do it. Because there will also be a lot of other people also.
Yeah.
You must be willing to die for God, not to do that. So they push them compulsory for their worshipping the gods, the pagan rites, and require the Jews to worship Greek deities. He erected an altar of Zeus in the temple in Jerusalem. Again, we get it. The responses of the Jews to his demands were acceptance to these inclined towards Hellenism or motivated by fear, passive resistance in the cities and towns, and open resistance by those in the country. Antiochus failed to anticipate the strong reaction by those who remained faithful to the Jewish law. Rather than solving the Palestine problem in 168 before Christ, he had precipitated a determined revolt by many of the Jews. As we go through these chapters, I just think the history of the tribes is just fighting all the way.
Yeah.
It's just fighting, 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 fighting. Why? Why? If they stay together, why? But yeah. Jealousy and I want this and I want that and fighting. Greediness. Greediness. Religious factors leading to the revolt. Seleucus was informed of the treasures stored in the coffers of the temple. Again, desiring to pay off some of the indebtedness, including the Antioch the Great, in his struggle against the Romans, Herodias was sent to plunder a temple. This incident increased the tension which existed in Judea between the more orthodox Jews and those favoring Hellenization. There they go again. Poor temple. Poor temple, because there was gold and everything, there was quite valuable stuff in there. Onius III was loyal to Orthodox Judaism, but his young brother Dircia was the leader of the Hellenizing party in Jerusalem. This position of Jason was favorable in the policies of Antioch, and Onius was removed from office in 174 before Christ, and Jason was installed as the high priest. To the Orthodox Jews, it was intolerable that the high priest should be appointed to this divine office by a Gentile. The fact that Jason belonged to the high priest family prevented the Jews from taking measures against him. So he was part of the priestly families. Now they also test them. I don't know how the bloodline is. I don't know how they test them, but we still got the priestly bloodline available, the real Jew with the priestly bloodline. Jason established a gymnasium in the city and encouraged Hellenization. Conflicts broke out between Hellenistic Jews, the Greek culture, and the Hasidim, the pious ones. Hellenistic Jews, led by the high priesthood, particularly in sports, music, and military exercises, they joined a fraternal movement that had begun in Attica to spread Greek culture. Many young men became members of the Epiboium and wore the distinct dress of a wide-brimmed hat, a cloak fastened with brooches and at the shoulders, and a high-laced boots. Where do we still see that?
In the other.
Think again.
You're saying where do we
Where
see?
still we see? Do we still see that they wear dresses with a wide-brimmed hat, a cloak fastened with brooches at the shoulders, and a high-laced boots?
I think in the temple, in the church, we see there are some churches that wear those gowns.
Yes, that is also, but the Jews at the Wailing Wall, that's doing that. They got that hat still on with the clothes. Okay, they don't all have them, they got white cloaks over that, but underneath there's a lot of them still walking with the black and the rimmed hat and everything. Yeah.
And what about, is that dressing also like the one that the Roman Catholic bishops wear?
Yes, but even when we get our degrees, we've got the black coat on, and you put that hat on. Yeah. So yes, that is still in use, but it's not so severe like this one. Yeah. Okay. Define Ephibion. The Ephibia, a compulsory. Okay, let's just see. It's a compulsory 2-year-long state-funded and organized program of military service for 18 and 19-year-old citizens called Ephibis. Did not exist as a formal institution prior to 334 to 333 before Christ, the date of the earliest known Ephibit inscriptions. So, tell me quickly, who at the moment train school children up from 15, there was some younger, more also like that. I saw it with my eyes today, I couldn't believe it. They get trained with armor, everything, in Palestine. In the Gaza Strip, they do it. They get trained to kill. They get trained to kill the Jews and the Christians. They get from small. They get that brainwashing that they must kill them at the end. They must be killed. I saw it today, I couldn't believe my eyes.
I think also in states like, I heard just a rumor that in, I think North Korea, every male, I think when you reach the age of 18, you are forced to join the army for a year, if anything,
Where's that?
in North Korea.
Yeah, but now remember, in South Africa it was also like that.
Like
When it
that
was
before.
war,
Yeah,
yeah, my husband was, that time when we had war,
yeah.
he was one of those, this is very long back then. I was 21, I was around 21. Yeah, that was when they had the 2 year, they were forced with training. And then they, in that 2 years, they could, the second year normally they go up to the border. That is training army, yes. Yeah. Now my husband was still of, with this war they can be, because they're now of age. Then they going out of the school and they go for army, yes. Yes. Now we, in South Africa we had it also like that. Yeah. But these, but I'm talking about the still children, the school children, 15, school children. They really get brainwashed to kill the Jews and the Christians.
I heard also, who was saying that, I think this one is not, they are not being trained to kill, no, but I believe the Muslims, they have a program that they do to the kids. When they are after school, they go to another class just to learn.
To learn stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's here. I
Mm.
don't know if it's here, but I know overseas there's a, but because this, what I'm talking about is Muslims.
This,
It is Muslims, it's Palestine Muslims.
Palestine.
Yeah, it is Muslims. So, but I don't know, what I do know is they're going, like, we've got Muslim people around us, they go to learn the Qumran. That I know for a fact. They go and they really study the Qumran and to talk, speak the language and all of that. That they do. I know. But that they can do still, even if they are in school. They can still start with that. But yes, they do that also. But military, I'm not so sure, because I know people around me with children at our school and they weren't in the military. But I don't know overseas, I don't know.
No.
It's not here in Cape Town, it's definitely not. But I don't know, it can be possibly overseas, by the Hamas or something like that. But as I say, what I saw and what I said there is that they actually train the children to kill. They literally take the children from school with the weapons. So, okay, it's not immediately fresh weapons, but it's imitating weapons to teach them how to do and all that things. So yeah, it's shocking. Shocking. But it's interesting to see that what is in the Bible is still running. It's not something that was, it's still running, still there. Right. Jewish customs and rites were made to appear crude, and the Jewish youth accepted the standards of the new enlightenment. Greek athletes ran naked in the races, and many young Jewish athletes took measures to have themselves uncircumcised because of derision, the mockery of the crowds. See, there they go. Okay, at that stage, they had to be circumcised still. So now, okay, to be like the Greek, so they don't mock me. So what did they do there? To do something, to get the proud, they put God's law one side so that they can get their story right. Okay? So there they even started with their law, what they're supposed to hold, to push it away. And that is where we must keep strong on. Athletics games, horse racing and theatre and speaking the Greek language were adopted by Jewish youth as part of a new culture. Okay, that's fine. Jason encouraged the worship of other gods. Now that's not fine. He sent a gift for the worship of Heracles Melkart, the god of Tyre. He arranged a torch-like procession in honor of Antiochus Epiphanes upon his visit to Jerusalem before the Egyptian campaign. After 3 years, Menelaus offered Antiochus a bribe and was appointed high priest. He was hated by all the Jews who loved the law because he was not a high priest family. So you can't so much just walk in and be a high priest if you're not if you're not a high priest family member. You must be a called family member in the high priest family. You can't just take anybody and put him there. Okay. So Antiochus had no sympathy for the Jewish tradition. So he broke that also. Crimes of Melanius. He secured the murder of Ananias III, the rightful and truthful high priest. He was the one who's supposed to be a high priest. He influenced his brother Lysimachus to steal the golden vessels from the temple again. Jason escaped death by fleeing to the Amorites, returned from exile and drove Menelaus out of Jerusalem. With the underlings of Judea in Phoenicia, Antioch IV returns to Jerusalem. He suppressed Jason, confiscated the temple treasure, and appointed Macrussus at Jerusalem upon Mount Garium and strengthened Menelaus' position. So, you know, there's a fact of in with the temple stuff, out with the temple stuff. In with the temple stuff, out with the temple stuff. So, that poor Jews must have had very difficult times. And now they want to rebuild the temple. And I think now it's going to be the same. They're going to try and fight for that also. Because it's, again, they already started with the making of everything. There's, again, gold and stuff. What's going to happen? They can't take it. They're going to be, again, war. I want it, you can't get it. I want it, you can't get it. The Dome of the Rock is standing again. They're all the same, exactly the same. Religious oppression precipitating the revolt. Upon arriving in Jerusalem in 169 before Christ, to restore Menelaus, high priest, Antiochus IV pillaged the temple and put more thousands of people to death as an act of reprisal. After Roman frustrated his Egyptian campaign in 168 before Christ, Antiochus turned his wrath upon Jerusalem with the intention to eradicate Judaism and colonize the territory of people and Hellenistic sympathies. Apollonius entered Jerusalem on a Sabbath day before he knew the Orthodox Jews would not fight, because he knew they won't fight. Now, what happened when the Hamas now attacked Jerusalem, Israel, now currently? On what day was it?
I think it was a holiday.
It was a Sabbath. They ended Israel on a Sabbath. The same as here. They know the Jews won't fight on a Sabbath. Okay, they did at the end, but they knew it was a resting day for the Jews. Again, the same here. They said, because he knew the Orthodox Jews would not fight. Apollonius entered Jerusalem on a Sabbath day because he knew the Orthodox Jews would not fight. It's exactly what the Manas did now currently. What's it now? 10 days. 10 days ago. He entered on a Sabbath day. He began to work his work of destruction. See now? Exactly the same way. He began his work of destruction. Many people were slaughtered. Women and children were taken as slaves. Okay, now they don't take as slaves, but they got them, kept them now. Yeah. All activities characteristic of Judaism were to be suppressed. The temple was profaned. The sacred books of the law were burnt. Heathen altars were erected. The people were forced to participate in heathen religious rites with threat of death. The old city walls built by Nehemiah were destroyed. The Accra cathedral with strong walls and high towers was built. The Accra housed foreign troops and Greek culture. The city of David was turned into Syrian fort, and it was appropriated for troops for the worship of Greek deities. You must just excuse here. See, this thing is up. I didn't even notice that it's running. There's a lot of typing errors, and I didn't fix that yet.
Oh.
There's a lot of typing errors. I just see, there's a lot of typing errors, and I didn't rectify that yet. Okay, then the names is automatically with it. Melanius was content to officiate a high priest over his syncretistic Jews and Greek rites. In 167 before Christ, further decrees forbade circumcision, Sabbath observance and reading the law, and encouraged indecent orgies in a temple building. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? So they just want to disturb everything of our God. In December 176 before Christ, Antiochus erected an altar to the Olympius Zeus on the altar of burnt offerings. And swine, that must be swine flesh, was offered on it. That was in 2 Maccabees 6 verse 2. The main thing that was not allowed by the Jews was swine flesh. And they really went for the Olympian Zeus and they offered swine flesh. That is not they wasn't allowed to do that. This can be the altar Daniel called the abomination of desolation in Daniel 11:31 and 12:11. Some chose to die rather than to defile by the king's food in 1 Maccabees 1 verse 63 and 1 Daniel. So that is the same question I just asked. If they ask you if you're going to die, you or die or you then you say die. They come and shoot me. Okay. And then we will see who is real Christians, who is not. Who's the so-called Christian and who is the real Christian. Who knows God and has the strength with the Holy Spirit to go through that, and who is just their own so-called Christian. Right? The Hasidim was pushed to the limit and resisted unto death. Many perished in the massacre. Others fled the city. An aged scribe, Eliezer, refused to eat swine flesh and was flogged to death. There they got it. 2 Maccabees 6 verse 18 to 31. A mother and her 7 sons were slaughtered for refusing to pay homage to an idol. 2 Maccabees 7. And that's the examples we get what we're supposed to do. Mothers who have circumcised their newly born children were put to death. 1 Maccabees 1:60 to 61. Because that was the law at that stage. That is what God expected from them. Was to be circumcised. But today's life is not necessary anymore. Because God came and He replaced it. Okay? With the new covenant. And He also say in the New Testament, circumcised or not circumcised doesn't matter. Okay? The book of Daniel. There are 3 incidents that indicate the book of Daniel indicates the Jewish situation under Antiochus the 4th, which are, let's see, the Jews were challenged to remain loyal to the law and refused to eat the king's meat. The Jews' way of life and ceremonial law are set forth as superior to those of the ruling class. The visions of the 3 depicted an abasement of Antiochus IV and his recognitions of the Most High God. So, chapter 2's conclusion. Judaism is in conflict with Hellenism, result in several phenomena which are evident in the New Testament. Let's see, the Hasidim was perpetuated in the sect of Pharisees, those separated to the law. Remember, what did Jesus say? Your Pharisees, go away. Okay? And that we know. The Sadducees had their roots in the priestly family which favored Hellenization. Now this is all in the book. The fortress of Acra near the temple continued to house foreign soldiers during the Roman period. Greek became the official language and was used by the writers of the New Testament. The Greek translation of the Old Testament was widely used in Palestine in the time of Jesus. Chapter 3. The Maccabean revolt and the Hasmonean period in 167 to 63 before Christ. You see, here we're coming closer to Christ.
Yeah.
2 important religious developments during the time. The parties of Judaism That was the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the essence, development, origination, and doctrine. That we know in Jesus' time they were there. Okay? Then the new development in Messianic hope resulted from the combining of the high priest and the civil ruler of one person. There they started hoping for the Messianic hope, for Jesus.
Yeah.
And still, with that Messianic hope, they still missed Jesus. He was there, and they missed him. Okay. 4 interferences by Greek rulers in Jewish religion practices that led to the revolt. Jewish convictions required divine appointment and family succession for the person occupying the office of high priest, but Greek ruler Antiochus IV considered himself supreme and appointed the high priest. Again, that is a problem. That started problems. And a revolt broke out. Because you can't do that. Jewish religious practices were forbidden by the Syrian monarch. Heathen altars were constructed, swine flesh was sacrificed, and the altar of the Olympic Zeus was placed upon the altar in the temple. That is what we did just the previous chapter. Many Jews were tortured and put to death. Now, that was some of the reasons for the revolt. Now, who was the leaders of the revolt? 3 of Mattathias and priest of Modin refused to offer sacrifices on pagan altars. His 3 sons were leaders in the revolt. So here we go now. They're going to say this is not enough. Judas was the leader of the revolt from 166 before Christ till he died in 161 before Christ. So there the revolt already started. Jonathan continued the warfare from 160 to 142 before Christ. Son was the high priest and led the Jewish nation during his independence from 142 to 134 before Christ. Now, pardon me, if you look at the names, those names come closer to names that we recognize in the group of Jesus.
Yeah.
You see, the names is coming closer now. Judas Matthias, 3rd son, won 4 battles. He won 1 victory over Apollonius and another over Siron and Beth Heron. Gorgias and Ammonus, and he occupied Jerusalem and purified the temple. Now, something very interesting. I've got a whole discussion on this. 25 December 164 before Christ, Judas restored the Levitical cult at the temple sacrifices. This date has since been celebrated as Hanukkah, the feast of dedication. Not the birth of Jesus Christ. It's totally something else. That is what was used. Now I've got it here. I'm going to tell you what is the feast of dedication. It's the time that the Jewish festival of lights that lasts for 8 days and nights in honor of 2,000 years of miracle in which light won out over darkness. There was a whole thing where they burned the candle. Let's see if I got it. In 175 before Christ, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes came into power and tried to force Judeans to assimilate. The Seleucids captured the holy temple for Jerusalem and defiled it by erecting an altar to the Greek god Zeus inside. Antiochus outlawed the Jewish faith and mandated the worship of the Greek gods. Now, horrified by the temple destruction and cruelty towards the Jewish people, a priest named Mattathias, as we said now, and his sons rose up a rebellion. After Mattathias' death in 166 before Christ, his son Judah and Maccabee, the hammer, the Maccabee means hammer, took his father's place in a fight and led the Jewish people to many victories over the Sadducees. In 164, Judah won his back Jerusalem and restored the temple, cleansing dedicating it. The revolt of the Maccabees, as it came to the known, continued and ultimately drove the Seleucids from Judah in 160. Now that is the Maccabees book. That is in the other side. Okay. So now the Hanukkah, which means dedication, commemorates the miracle of light that occurs when Judah dedicated the temple to the Hebrew God. So it's our God. According to the Talmud, one of the Jews' holy texts, the Seleucids left only one intact, in one candle intact, a vial of oil, not a candle of oil, just enough to light the temple candelabrum for 1 day. But it burned for 8 days, enough time for the victorious Judean to secure more oil. And the miracle became the foundation of the beloved holiday to thank God and celebrate the victory of the light over darkness. That is what 25 December is. Not Christ's birthday. Now if you go into God's, the birthday they use, the tree they use is in the Old Testament, also said by God, that is, you must stop it, burn it. We can go into that one another day. The tree, the ornaments is the same thing in the Old Testament. Please don't go on with that. There's a lot of things, but that is, Father Christmas is a pagan god. That is actually discussed on its own, but you can read up, you can actually find it online, and I had it on the group also. But yes, so be careful. And I'm not from another religion. I'm not from another religion, I'm a normal Baptist. And I'm a pure religion from God. But just for sake, there you got the date. What is the 25th of December? Okay, what it actually is. Right, the Feast of Dedication, because the candle burned for 8 days, but was supposed to burn out within 1 day.
1 day,
Okay. The struggle for full independence. Word come from Antioch to Lysias that Philip was attempting to take over the government in his absence, and thus forced them that Lysia had to come to immediate terms with Judas. This peace terms required Judas to surrender and fortifications around the temple, and in turn Lysias granted a general amnesty which cancelled the orders issued by Antiochus IV in 167 before Christ. What a problem! Which was about the worship of the Olympian Zeus, who was forcefully removed from the high priest Manilius and put to death. The Jews continued under Syrian rule, but they had religious freedom. Judas, Jonathan, and Simon. Don't those names sound so familiar in the New Testament? But it's not the same ones, eh? Continued resistance from political independence. Pardon me. Judas was victorious in a battle near the village of Adasa, in which Nicanor was killed. Alcamus joined Demetrius in opposing Judas and the Hasidim. The Syrian army overwhelmed Judas and killed him and his followers. Flee. You can see this time I was tired with a lot of that paragraph with a lot of typing errors. But Judas already sent a deputation to Rome to establish an alliance and seek help. The warning to Demetrius concerning his future dealings with the Jews arrived too late to prevent the death of Judas. Roman action did elevate the Jews from the future Syrian aggression. Jonathan as leader in Judea, 160 to 142 before Christ. After the death of Judas, the revolt was quelled. All the Jewish affairs were under the control of the Hellenistic high priest. Most of the Jews were grateful that they could worship in freedom according to their laws. The leadership of the movement was taken over by Jonathan, the fifth and youngest son of Mattathias. Bacchus had captured, tortured, and put to death many of the followers of Judas, but others had escaped. Bacchides attempted to prevent future trouble by holding leading Jews as hostages in the Accra and by building fortifications around Jerusalem. Jonathan became the judge for the people in Makmesh. 5 years of peace ensued, allowing the influence of Jonathan and his followers to increase. Competition between Demetrius I and Alexander Palus arose over the Syrian throne. Alexander Palus claimed to be the Antioch and had the support of the Roman Senate. Both men favored Jonathan and recognized him as a leader of the Jewish people. Demetrius released the hostages from the Accra and permitted Jonathan to master troops and equip them with arms. Syrian troops were withdrawn from Judea with the exception of 3 places. Demetrius offered Jonathan exemption from taxation, surrender of the Accra, restore the ceded territories, subsides for the temple, and money for the rebuilding of the city walls. There they're going to build the city walls again. Alexander Palus determined to outbid Demetrius and offered Jonathan the appointment of high priest and the title the king's friend. Jonathan made a wise decision of continuing his support of Alexander Palus. In 150 before Christ, Demetrius was slain in the battle of Palus. Jonathan was still treated with great respect, and Palus made him general and governor of Judea. Jonathan held the office of leadership in Judea as a servant of Syrian government and with the approval of his own people. Tryphon, the son of Alexander Palus, made Jonathan a general and engaged in a number of campaigns. Jonathan continued to strengthen the position with the Romans and to fortify Jerusalem. You see, those stuff is all written in one paragraph, but there's actually different facts that they got there. So if you break it up in facts, you see more actually what's going on, instead of reading a paragraph. You see, there's different stuff that happened. Tryphon was planned to kill Antiochus VI and claim the throne for himself. He decided to rid himself of the threat of Jonathan. Tryphon invited Jonathan and 1,000 men to Polybius. Jonathan was arrested and his men were slaughtered. Simon immediately appointed Jonathan's successor, strengthened the fortifications around Jerusalem, and prepared for a confrontation with Tryphon. Tryphon negotiated with Simon but broke his promise that in return for hostages and 100 talents of silver he would release Jonathan. Not long afterwards, he killed Jonathan. Anyway. Okay. The Hasmonean rule, 142 to 63 before Christ. Simon, the second oldest son of Matthias, led the Jews in political and military success. He offered loyalty to Demetrius II in his struggle against Tryphon, who had murdered Antiochus VI in exchange for exemption from taxation, which in essence was a recognition of Judea as an independent state. Demetrius II agreed to Simon's request. Simon was acclaimed as the deliverer who removed the yoke of the Gentiles from Israel. He was recognized as the great high priest and commander and leader of the Jews. The Jewish people officially made Simon high priest in 140 before Christ. In 137 before Simone forces were victorious against the army in Antiochus II. 2 of his most notable acts were the capture of the Accra in Jerusalem and the crushing of the Hellenizing party. Simon was recognized by his subjects as a great and wise ruler, a man of peace, and one devoted to observe the law. He was a man of great wealth, supporting the army of his own expense. Simon was testified to exercise his authority through the office of his priest, but his successors claimed the royal status of king in addition to the priestly status. For 79 years, Judea enjoyed independence. Although the Hellenization party was crushed, Hellenism continued as a cultural factor and played a vital role in the life of the Jewish people. Simon and 2 of his sons were murdered at the banquet near Jericho by one of his son-in-law in 134 before Christ. You can't even trust your own family. This assassin failed to kill John Hyrcanus, the Simon's second son. He escaped to Jerusalem and was given refuge from the attack and was recognized as the high priest. So here we go. John Hyrcanus, 134 to 105 before Christ. The legitimate high priesthood had previously belonged to the house of Onias, which was replaced by the appointment of Menelaus, Alcamus, and Jonathan. Petatius did not belong to the house of Onias, as we know, but he was a priestly line. Thus, Onias restored civil power to the high priestly office. There we come again now to the better side again. Hyrcanus sent embassy to Rome, which confirmed the independence of Judea and warned the Syrian not to harm the Jews. In 109 before Christ, Hyrcanus minted his own coins which bore his own name. He did not publicly call himself king, but inscription on the coin implied such a claim. You don't need to say it. You don't need to say it. He's implying it.
Yeah.
The Pharisees and Sadducees came into prominence during the rule of Hyrcanus. He appeared to favor the Pharisees, but broke with them as a result of the incident at the banquet. Hyrcanus declared his alliance to the law and requested his quest to correct him if he had done wrong in any way. Now we can see where the Pharisees went wrong. You know, it's always just the law, just the law. Never God is always keep by the law. You know, their focus started going over about the law and not about God's law. You know, God was out of it. And request his guests to correct him if he was wrong in any way. All of his guests praised him except Eliezer, a Pharisee, who arose to challenge him to give up the high priesthood and content himself with civil government. When Eliezer was requested to justify his position, he replied that Hyrcanus' mother had once been a captive in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Captive women were usually violated. Therefore, the inferior to the Hyrcanus was the son of an impure woman and ineligible from a high priesthood because of the mother. If she was now kept in prison, doesn't matter. That's actually cruel, right? The Sadducees present took advantage of the situation and suggest that this slanderous suggestion met with the approval of the Pharisees as a whole. To demonstrate their loyalty, the Pharisees were invited to suggest the punishment for Eliezer. They suggested stripes and chains instead of the required penalty of death for slander of this kind. Cruel, really cruel. Hyrcanus had decreed that his widow should succeed him as mistress of the realm, and the oldest of his 5 sons, Aristobulus, Juahuda, should become priest. Aristobulus covered both civil and religious powers for himself and could. He imprisoned his mother and brothers, with the exception of his favorite brother Antiochus. He let his mother starve and heeded the rumors of false accusations of his wife Salome Alexandra concerning Antiochus. The jealousy and suspicion of Aristobulus caused him to put Antiochus to death. Aristobulus conquered the territory of Galilee and added to Judea. Those who remained in the land were forced to accept circumcision and observe the Jewish law, even though they were predominantly Gentile by race. Generally Aramaic since the fall of Israel in 722 before Christ. Just to think, he captured his mother and he started to death. His family, his own family. It actually was a cruel nation, eh? Very cruel nation. Judaizing the Galileans was strengthened by resettlement. The activities of the Pharisees and the building of the synagogues. The activities of Aristobulus prepared Galilee for the activities of Jesus and his disciples. There we see that. Galilee. Alexander Jannaeus, 103 to 76 before Christ. He was a high priest but delighted in military campaigns and enlarged his realm. He increased his kingdom until it was as extensive as the ancient kingdom of David. In his own country he was unpopular with the Orthodox Jews and members of the Pharisaistic party. His military exploits and drunken manner of the life increased his unpopularity that we had already on the occasion of the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, at which he was officiating a high priest. He was pelted with lemons and insult with the declaration that he was unfit to hold office. Here you do it with stones. You do it with stones. According to Josephus, he was so infuriated that he ordered his mercenary soldiers to massacre the people, which resulted in the death of 6,000. Jerusalem was filled with discontent, and the Jews sought an opportunity to gain revenge. A revolt was instigated under the leadership of the Pharisees. Josephus, the historian, estimates that 50,000 were slain during the following 6 years. The historian we spoke about previously of the book of the Jews, the history book of the Jews. After Jannaeus re-established his authority or forces Demetrius to withdraw, he took vengeance on his enemies while feasting with concubines. He ordered that 800 of his enemies to be crucified and their wives and children first to give slaughter before their eyes. It's the give slaughter to get slaughtered before his eyes. It must be very cruel. 8,000 of his enemies fled by night and remained in exile. Other scholars believe that these fleeing opponents is to be connected to the founding of the Qumran community. Now, if you go further into the book, you will find the Qumran community. Now, if you also remember the new text that was that they found in the Qumran caves, that is the Qumran community that was there. Okay. They identified Jannaeus as the wicked priest who persecuted the teacher of rightnesses. With the flight of his opponents, peace came to Jannaeus during the rest of his reign. Okay, Salome Alexander, 76 to 67 before Christ. Alexander survived the second husband and continued to rule for 11 years. That is now Salome Alexander. Just now it was a male, now it's a female. Okay. She made her older son Hyrcanus the second high priest, but retained civil rule for herself. Hyrcanus was indolent, he was a laid-back person with other words, and passive, allowing his mother to control him. His younger brother, Archibald II, was an able and energetic young man who was displeased with his action of his mother. Alexander's rule was a golden age for the Pharisees. Under the leadership of the Pharisees, Simeon be set up, a school system was founded in Jerusalem. It prompted the study of the law as well as the other subjects. So now they started studying the law. The Pharisees became strong enough to permit them to gain revenge for past suffering, and advisors of Jannaeus who shared in the execution of the 800 rebels were put to death. Remember then the males were trained, not the females.
Yeah.
Yeah, the female weren't trained. Okay, there was the focus on the males. Alexander becomes seriously ill at the age of 73. Aristobulus II was the youngest son, and he realized that he must move quickly to accomplish his own ambition and become king. He won the support of the outlying fortresses and was prepared to civil war against Hyrcanus II upon his mother's death in 76 before Christ. Fighting again. Aristobulus II, 67 to 63 before Christ, upon the death of Salome Alexander, Hyrcanus II assumed the royal office of king, but Aristobulus II immediately marched against his elder brother and defeated him at Jericho. Aristobulus II claimed the office of king and high priest, but permitted his brother to remain the revenue. Hyrcanus II retired to private life. Antipar's father was appointed governor of Idumea by Alexander Junius, and Antipar's famous son was Herod. Here we come. Herod the Great. Here we go. Josephus, the historian, stated that Herod the Great was the Idumean by birth, which is descendant of the Edomites. Remember, we also had that before, and thus the traditional enemy of the Jews. Now see who crucified Jesus and what happened then?
Okay.
Edomites. Okay. He was an enemy of the Jews in any way. Okay. The Roman arm appeared in Syria with the design of extending Roman authority to the Euphrates River. Civil war in Judea was intolerable to the Roman general Pompey. Both Hyrcanus and Aristobulus sent envoys to win the favor of Scaurus, but Aristobulus succeeded, and the army of the Nabateans was ordered to withdraw the siege, and Aristobulus was confirmed in office as king. In 63 before Christ, Pompey received deputations from the brothers while in Damascus. Pompey entered the city of Jerusalem when Hyrcanus' support opened the gates, and he laid siege to the fortified temple area, where resistance continued for 3 months. The wall was breached and the temple was taken, and the result of a terrible massacre in which 12,000 Jews were killed, including priests as they officiated at the altar. Pompey and his men entered the Holy of Holies, an act of sacrilege, but they did not plunder the temple treasures. The following day, he permitted the temple to be cleansed and reinstated Hyrcanus as high priest. Hyrcanus, again, you see there he was out on his back again, also functioned as ethnarch, and the use of the title of king was discontinued. Pompey left Scaurus, the legate, Pompey. Left Scaurus, legate of Syria, in charge of Hyrcanus, functioned under him, and Aristobulus was detained as a prisoner and carried to Rome along with the 2 daughters and 2 sons, Alexander and Antiochus. Pompey's victory put an end to the rule of Hasmonaeans. And that's the end of the chapter. As I say, I just break it up in different categories. And then the next one will be the Roman period before Christ. And they become more into Christ era.